Rich, thank you for welcoming the EMTB Podcast to RaceCo Cycles here in Birmingham. Thank you very much for having me here, for starters.
No, thank you for coming and seeing us. Obviously, always good to have people in store and have a chat.
The good thing is that today I've come on a Wednesday and I've seen the amount of bikes that you've got already in boxes ready to be built. It does look like weekends tend to get busy around here.
Yeah, we had a big drop of bikes this morning, kind of coincidental really, when you want the place looking as sharp as possible. There's normally a huge delivery of bikes come through the door. But yeah, it's got to be built, got to replenish our stores and keep everything going.
So which brands do you sell here at the shop?
So we do a lot with Specialized and High Bike. They're our two main, certainly bike brands. Clothing-wise, there's a few others, suspension-wise, etc.
I mean, that's probably a good thing because we're currently sat in front of your Specialized stand. Very attractive that it is. And in terms of the numbers of bikes that you sell, do you find that one brand sells or is more popular than another?
I mean, Specialized have always been, obviously, class leading, I think, in the field of e-bikes, so they've always worked very, very well. The Levos, the Canevos, the SL platforms have all gone very well for us, along with the trekking, touring, the Vados and Comos. So they've got a very full range, fantastic backup, and everything goes well. High Bike, again, they're coming in slightly different price pointed to the Specialized, but again, at this time of the year, they're actually been really strong. We've had some super strong offers on them at the moment, we've been selling really well.
In terms of the state of the industry at the moment, a lot of people have been observing that things are maybe getting a little bit more difficult for retailers and for the brands themselves. Have you found that to be the case this winter, or has it not been too bad?
I mean, there's always some downturn coming into winter and coming out of winter. There is always some downturn. It's hard to gauge pretty much exactly. I think there's a lot of talk of and a lot of obviously media regarding distributors, brands that are struggling and entering into administration in an attempt to be saved and bits like that. So there's definitely key changes, but as a store, things are different. We seem to have built a good relationship with a lot of our customers that have continued to support us, through these times that would traditionally be quieter through the winter.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And obviously during COVID, the big issue that many shops were having was just getting hold of stock. And now there seems to be that oversupply of stock. Have you got brands that are sort of phoning you now and saying, like, do you need more bikes?
It's been an interesting difference in roles as it's come out. Yeah. For sure, COVID was. To be honest, there wasn't really any question. You'd take whatever you could get, and in whatever quantity you could get.
Really.
Certainly, e-mountain bikes have been our big seller. We've been behind it from the start, and that's something that really has kind of kept us going. We've built with a lot of brands. That's helped keep us busy.
You've already moved on to it. I mean, I can see currently we are surrounded by e-bikes. I mean, I'm actually struggling to see a normally aspirated bike around here right now.
There's a Stumpy Evo and an Enduro up there, and then we've got the predominance of them upstairs with some demo downhill bikes and stuff as well.
Yeah.
It has been interesting over the past 10 to 15 years to see the change from, we were one of the first shops behind it. We had a 3 or 4 bike selection in our store early on before anyone was really involved in it. And people thought we were mad. It was like, you're never going to sell those. And, it was interesting to see how it's changed so much now to the complete reversal where a massive percentage of the bikes that we sell are now electric.
Yeah. Do you think... Actually, in terms of geography around here, I wouldn't consider the Midlands to be the hilliest of places. But then saying that, you have got places like Cannock Chase not that far away. Do you think where you're based lends itself to e-mountain bikes, or do you think it's just literally the industry that is just moving that way?
We are super lucky. Locally within 10-15 minutes of the shop, we've got a cracking riding spot. Our local hills, Clent and Walton, there's some cracking trails that the guys work really hard up there to keep maintained, obviously. A lot non-official trails.
Okay, yeah.
We're also, as you say, being slap bang in the centre, it equips us pretty well. You know, we can get into Forest of Dean relatively, hour and a quarter from here, or know, Ross an hour from here. You know, we're well placed to go wherever, whether it be north, up to Cannock, and then some of the other riding spots a bit further up. North Wales, obviously. We're pretty well insulated with everything's relatively close. You know, it's locally there's a good scene. There's several, kind of jumping spots and bits like that as well. Free ride area at Kinver, which is, got some big tasty stuff there. I know Chris has been there a few times.
Okay.
Yeah, got plenty around.
Who would you describe as your average e-bike customer these days? Like back in the day, there used to be a bit of a stigma and a stereotype around the people that would ride e-bikes. And now I'm like, from my personal perspective, I'm starting to see that perhaps is shifting. Do you notice that in the shop?
For sure. Even in our, local riding groups and community, there's a big change. Originally it was generally the older guys that were looking down the e-bike route. Now it's kind of changed to where even some of the young rippers are involved in the sport of the EMTB and pushing it forward as well. That's where I guess the next growth is going to come from in terms of talent and moving forward.
How often do you see that? The story that I often hear is a couple comes into a bike shop because maybe their other half is looking to get a bike, and maybe the man in the relationship says, "Oh, my wife is considering a bike, and I think we might get her an e-bike." And then how often do they end up buying 2 e-bikes, or do they come back a few weeks later and realise they need another one?
It is quite comical. We often say, it's they're viewing it for my wife because she struggles when we go out for a ride. I'm like, yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, I reckon. They're like looking at you like you've gone out, and then as sure as can be, they come back in and then they're hooked into it, and yeah, it's good. It's good. I think they just needed to see the potential, or maybe I think a lot of people think they're like I say, it is that stigma that goes with it. I think that's changing drastically though these days.
Do you think?
It certainly has changed, and I think it's more and more acceptable than it's ever been. Yeah.
I've definitely noticed a shift. I mean, I worked with e-bikes, and I used to use them as a mode of transport to sort of get around the place when I was carrying camera gear, and regularly, particularly if you're in places where people weren't necessarily used to seeing e-bikes, you would get that cheat that people would regularly say, look, he's cheating. And now it just seems to be far less frequent. People, like you say, do seem to be accepting it that little bit more. Yeah,
I mean, we were all heckled because we were early adopters of it, probably more than most, the people that have jumped on it in the last really 5 years or so. Prior to that, it'd be called a cheat. And we kind of said from the start, you can't cheat at fun. And this for us is more fun, more miles, more smiles, and just, enjoying it. And, the bikes gradually started to get better. When we were the first generation of Bosch, the proper first generation of Bosch, we were like, this has got some legs. It's starting to go in some of the early high bikes. Then Gen 2 Bosch came out, and we're like, this is gaining some traction. And then suddenly, everyone started pushing forwards. The bikes just got better to a point where, I'd say some of the lightweight stuff's hands down the best handling bikes that I've rid, period.
Oh, I've been riding the Gen 2 Levo SL and Canevo SL, and I am just absolutely blown away by them.
Yeah, they're two absolutely cracking bikes, and it's bizarre how almost opposite the bikes are as well. The Levo being so short and, Levo SL being so short and nimble and playful, and then the KSL being an absolute bruiser when you get it into the chunky stuff.
That thing is a barge, and I realised just how long it was when I tried to get into my shed on its back wheel, and the height of it is incredible. I've got an S5 frame, and it's long.
Yeah, even the reach on the S4 is a big girl. Like I say, it's been interesting coming from that bike back to a full power Levo again, from an S4 to an S4, how different the reach was, which was, but you soon adapt back, and I think it's generally into that argument of, are people going longer bikes still? Are people going longer reaches still?
Is that the case?
It seems to be. I think it kind of had a little surge and then a drop, and then it seems to have surged again. I think people are just, I don't know, maybe listening more at the point of sales to people who've got some real world advice with it, which is quite nice.
Yeah. One thing, I mean, we've touched on it earlier than I'd planned on, but the SL thing, the lightweight e-bike thing, now the motors are becoming that bit more powerful. Do you see more people going down the route of an SL bike, or are the majority still looking for that full-powered e-bike?
I think it seems to be coming down a lot to the riding group. If the riding group is on a full-power bike with a big old battery and they're trucking up hills in turbo for a couple of hours and then putting it back in the van and going home, yeah, the SL's going to maybe struggle a little bit with that, unless the guy's significantly fitter or lighter, younger maybe. Not that has any real bearing, but, as you'll be aware as a rider of those bikes, when you ride them, as far as being a rider's bike go, they are probably the best riders' bikes. But I think the whole community and the people that ride together dictate that what bike you'd be buying, possibly more than your own personal preference.
Yeah, I feel that, and I still struggle to think of a way or find a way that it would fit in with my life, purely because of the people that I ride with. They're either on a regular mountain bike or they're on a full-powered e-bike, and I've currently got that 2-bike setup. To then have to factor in a bike in the middle as well is like a whole nother thing altogether, especially with the prices that we're looking at of the current SLs. I think that's probably one of the things that's holding a lot of people back, maybe, is they are still at that higher end, aren't they, for anything that's half decent? Yeah,
I think you have got to be spending some serious bucks on them to get into the SL market at the moment.
That S-Works that I've got is 13 grand.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's scary. But at the same time, they do always feel a bit special, don't they? There is something with S-Works product that feels special. My S-Works KSL, I will say, was my favourite bike I've had to date.
Yeah.
Loved it. Never had a bad ride on it. But the riding group changed. The guys that were younger and, racing enduro at a pretty reasonable level all moved on to going into e-bikes and full-fat e-bikes. And some of the older guys that were still super fit, that were still riding pedal bikes, also decided to go that way as well. And I can honestly say, I've never done so much riding. There was gone to a point where I could, ride with those old guys all day on an SL and be just as knackered as they were because I'm just not as fit. Yeah. But obviously, when they've made the move to full power, I was never going to be able to carry on riding an SL. Yeah. It was going to be hard work.
What bike do you personally ride?
Current S-Works Levo, full fat.
Yeah, good choice.
It's a bit like Trigger's broom. She's she's not got much of the original of her left, but she's a good girl. You've
been riding her hard.
She's seen some abuse.
Yeah. So let's talk about top tips when buying an e-bike. What I would also like to talk about is what people should consider when buying their first e-bike, but then also there's people that have been in the e-bike industry for a few years now and they're looking at perhaps upgrading. I guess we could probably single out both types of buyer. If you were looking to buy your first e-bike, what are the best things to start looking at when you come into a shop?
I think the biggest things are just to have a chat with the staff who, hopefully are going to be well trained and going to be able to tell you, from your experience of what you want and what you're planning to do and how you're planning to do it, and how frequently you're planning to do it. We'll be able to point you in the direction, hopefully, of a couple at least of good options. Maybe some above your budget slightly, maybe some below your budget, maybe some smack on your budget, and explain the key differences between, what they're going to provide you and what's going to give you the value for money.
Yeah. And then in terms of upgrading, there's people out there that perhaps got a bike now, the motor's out of warranty, they're looking to sort of upgrade to that next level. Do people need to spend more money to get something that feels altogether better than perhaps a generation of bike a few years ago?
I think there's not really any masking, the chassis of a bike. If you upgrade a chassis of a bike and are riding, a bike that handles very well from the chassis point of view, and you're not trying to mask, kinematics that aren't really great or leverage ratios that aren't ideal for you as a rider, then you're going to be limited by an older frame design because they have been developed and pushed forwards.
How can you reassure people now that now is a good time to be buying an e-bike? Because I come across people that say, "Oh, I'll buy one when I get older. Maybe that's the sort of thing I'll do when I'm sort of, getting a bit leggy." And then the other thing is people saying, "Oh, the technology is improving so quickly. Why would I buy one now when I could buy one in a year or two's time?"
It's a hard bridge to cross because, it has been and continues and I'm certain will continue to be an arms race. Bigger, lighter, faster, better handling, better components. It continues to just grow and grow. Assuring someone why they should buy now instead of 12 months' time is always going to be hard because, we don't know what's going to be here in 12 months' time. We don't know what the market's going to have done in 12 months' time, and we don't know certainly what pricing is going to be in 12 months' time. Historically, we have gone significantly up over the last 2 to 3 years through COVID, and then we have took a pretty sharp downturn down on prices. Manufacturers have dropped their retail price on bikes, for the 2023 season, which is exciting. It's giving more people a chance at getting into a very good e-bike for sensible money. Yeah.
There's definitely a lot more lower cost options now, which almost didn't exist a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way money's changed as well from a few years ago to now, that there is a difference in cost of living, everything. So much stuff has changed, but when bikes that were costing, £7,000 a year ago are now down to under 6,000, it is a big chunk of difference. And yeah, it's been noticeable, and I think that's created a bit more sense of urgency in the public and to get onto these good deals while they exist.
Yeah, and I just keep seeing them now. The most incredible deals that are out there, and it almost makes me think now, do I need to start looking at upgrading just because the cost of upgrading is so good? Whether that now impacts the used price, that's probably my only concern, I guess. If I was to look to upgrade from my current bike, am I going to get less for it?
It's definitely been one of the knock-on things that we have seen. The used price on bikes seems to significantly have dropped. How long that's going to remain low for, we certainly don't know. And, I guess there's only the market that's going to bring it up. I think there's an element maybe of saturation through COVID where people have bought kind of bikes early in COVID, used them all the way through when they had furlough time, and then maybe drop them back into the market.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about a little contentious subject, and that's reliability in e-bikes. So I guess one reason why buying now is better than buying, say, a few years ago is things are becoming more reliable. Have you found that any one system is more reliable than another?
Honestly, from actual reliability statistics, from what we would look at, the Specialized SL system has been one of our most reliable systems. The Yamaha PWX3 system that we've fitted and we've been doing for probably just over 12 months, maybe 18 months now.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with has also proved very good. The Levo, obviously the Bros motor has significantly improved. We were having the conversation the other day from the inception of the magnesium cast motors. We're reckoning there's probably 10 times ish the reliability.
Is that right?
We believe so. Like on what we're seeing, we've still got customers that seem to be able to destroy them pretty quickly, and then other customers that you never really see again, or they're just coming for regular servicing.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I genuinely think, we're super happy with the product that we now sell. It's the reason we've limited ourselves to the brands we have. We haven't dabbled in some manufacturers of motors or done less with some manufacturers of motors for reliability reasons.
Sure.
The brands that we have, we primarily use obviously the Specialized Brose. The high bike use a mix of Yamaha and Bosch, and we're super happy with all those.
Yeah.
Can't complain on any of them really. More than anything, as a store, as a business, we've backed ourselves well to deal with it. We try to keep motors, batteries, parts in store for when the worst and the eventualities do happen. So it's not the guy's not calling you thinking I'm going to be leaving my bike for 2, 3, 4 weeks, wondering what's going on. You're like, look, we can be really reactive to this. We've got the parts. we'll get the nod on it and get it done. It's no problem at all.
Yeah. And in terms of buying from a bike shop, many people wonder whether they should maybe save a little bit of money and buy direct from a retailer, or whether to buy from their local bike shop. That surely is one of the sort of standout reasons why you perhaps should consider buying from a bike shop.
Absolutely. The focus on warranty and the focus on customer services, there's a door to go to. You can wheel your product to that door. There's a real person standing behind it that genuinely wants to help you. We've always said it, we're not really selling bikes, we're selling relationships. We've got so many repeat customers. We're super happy. We've looked after so many people, and they've looked after us, when they've come to the next bike. We've had instances of taking on warranty work for people where they hadn't necessarily bought the bike from us. We've completed the warranty work. They're all happy. Comes around to buying the next bike. Come and see us.
Yeah.
So
when people ask me what bike should I buy, I normally will talk about the motor system. What do you prefer? And I usually talk about the reliability. That's quite a big one up there. My view is that my favorite bike, and the one that I would recommend to people, regardless of reliability, regardless of any other factors, would be a Levo. But then I've got many friends that have owned Levos, and they have been on their second or third motors. I've got other friends who have got Bosch powered bikes, and they tend to be on the same motor that they bought the bike with. Am I right in saying that the Bosch motor is still the most reliable, or do you think it's becoming more even across the board?
I think when you're talking into motors, there's the Levo is the only probably belt drive really system out there. So it has got a belt on there. It does bring significant advantages. Like, I do personally think it's the best system to ride. Yeah. The backup, everything that goes with Specialized works super well. The Bosch system, I know a lot of people we've seen people who've had issues again, because we are still one of the 9 centres of excellence for Bosch. We take on any Bosch warranty work for any any dealer that's out there. So we've seen a multitude. We saw overheating batteries early on with the 750s, where they're non-removable. We've seen bits. I think there's not a huge variance.
Yeah.
I think if you break it down, the reality is, Bosch, you are governed by the time it's going to be. Specialised, if we're selling a customer a bike, they can, if there is an issue and the worst happens, which honestly is far less of a regularity now, we're there to deal with it. We dealt with it through the worst times when it was not great. We're now into a point where it's actually fantastic. We're super happy with where it's going. It's good.
Could you break down systems and pinpoint what the most common faults tend to be? I'm sorry that we're focusing on faults. I didn't really mean to do that.
I could, but it'd take some time and some correlation to what's doing what and where and why. Times of the year even play a massive, weather and time of the year plays a massive part into it. It does. There's some bikes that don't like wet. There's some bikes that don't like being too hot. It's not just it's not a straight line or a static.
On that note, let's talk about e-bike care. So I often tell people in the winter, maybe refrain from cleaning your bike. And if, at the most, maybe clean your drivetrain and make sure your suspension's working well. Other than that, I would generally stay well away from water. What would be your advice when it comes to looking after your e-bike in the winter?
Are we talking about the motor systems or just general care of the rest of the bike?
Let's go for the motor systems, and because it is specific to e-bikes.
I go with a judicial application of common sense.
Yeah.
Being honest, if you come back and your bike is hanging, it's been super wet, it's got grass and mud dripping off it, it's time to give it a clean.
Yeah.
If you go back, we've had some nice dry weather the last couple of weeks, it's got a light dusting on there, would I be breaking the hose out? No, I don't think so. It would be just a clean down and lube up if it needed it.
Yeah.
But you've got to just keep that application of common sense to it. I don't think, sometimes it's better the devil you know, whether you do or don't clean the bike excessively. We see some guys who do maybe excessively clean and they get into the same problems as the guys who don't really clean a great deal at all.
Yeah.
It's just, I think, applying common sense seems to be there.
And what would be your advice for buying a used e-bike? Because there are some people that just can't afford to buy a new bike and maybe one of the spec that they're looking at.
I mean, they obviously specialised on their 2019, 2020 models, extended their warranty to 4 years on some of them. So if you can pick up something like 2020 or, something newer that's got a transferable warranty, which literally, as far as I know, there's pretty much only Specialised that do a transferable warranty to a second owner.
Sure.
That's ideal because you can be out of the frying pan and into the fire and ready for a good spend if something, the worst does happen with a brand. If you got to replace a battery that's out of warranty or a motor that's out of warranty, it can be a real big concern, and it can be, almost bridging the gap between buying used and buying new.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the only thing a lot of people are concerned about, owning an e-bike out of warranty. And obviously, if you end up with your bike out of warranty and you have to sell it, that's another concern, is just trying to get rid of it then. What sort of advice would you give to people in that instance?
Like I say, personally, I would always want to try and ride a bike that's in warranty. I'm one of those people. I think it would stress me out knowing I could have a, £1,000 battery bill or a £600 motor bill. And, the appeal of replacing with a new bike is always strong as well. On a personal level, we work in a shop every day. We see all the nice Gucci new stuff that's come in, and, the leaps forward that stuff are, bikes and equipment are making. So yeah, it's nice to stay current, and it's nice to be able to, retain pulling a premium on your bike that you're selling by offering it with the 6 months transferable warranty.
So where do you see the industry going in terms of technological development? I mean, we've seen the electrification of bikes, not just the motor systems, but I guess it started off with a seat post, the dropper, and then we ended up with drivetrains, and now we've got electronic suspension systems as well. Do you think that's set to continue, and do you think that will also filter down onto the lower cost bikes?
A filter down, I definitely don't know about that one. I think there's an association with a premium level kit and a cost that's involved with it. The electronic suspension, to be honest, I've ridden that the Levo SL Limited with the flight attendant on. Yeah. It's pretty fabulous. Yeah. It really is. I'm a bit of a suspension geek for setting up and riding, and I was instantly amazed by the fact that it feels like 3 or 4 completely different bikes to ride in one, on the bike on a chassis that I was already used to as well.
Isn't that mad?
Yeah. It's seamless as well and fast. Like I say, I think there's going to be a place for it, and I think the development for it. Not everyone's going to want the technological side of it and be that fussed. I think some people would be quite happy with a 3-position switch, where someone would be happy with a master computer that's doing it 20 times a second.
Yeah.
There's no rhyme and reason, but certainly the advancements, we see generally, watching over the last 10 years how it's gone, it's been bigger batteries, more power. I think there's companies that then achieve that, and then they realised actually they've just got too heavy for that. So it's really exciting. I think I like to think in the next 2-3 years you're going to start to see bikes which got what I would think are the magic numbers.
Yeah.
But whether that comes, we thought that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but they've got to a point where they're so much better. And, I think there's just going to the bar's just going to keep rising.
What is that magic number? Is it lighter and more powerful with longer range?
I think it's the right way, with the right, with a big range that's quiet. Everyone wants everything.
Yeah.
And, that's the feedback we get. There's always someone who's got maybe one little quirk thing that they don't like about the bike. Maybe it's not long enough travel. Maybe it's not this. I think the bikes are there's so many options out there now. But bikes they're just good. The bikes are getting better and better. And like I say, more people are into, customising, building them the way they want them. It's been, exciting times with that as well. With some of the drops pricing on some of the Levo carbon bases, we've been doing some real nice custom builds that have been on our social media. That, got people a really well sorted bike for not a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Off the peg bikes are great for the majority of people. There's always going to be people that have got their own wants or needs that, we've still got a budget to work with as well.
It must be cool to be able to customise your bike straight out of the box almost.
Yeah, like I say, it's been, the market's allowed us to do that with Specialised dropping the price down as they did on that bike. Unfortunately, they've all long gone by now, but you know, we made hay while the sun shone.
Yeah, of course. That new SRAM T-type system, I've been riding that on the SL bikes, and I've been absolutely blown away by that. It's so good, and that to me, like even just the GX version, I think that to me is a really good upgrade for a bike. And would you recommend people to start looking down that route?
Honestly, I'm a massive believer in it. It's strange, you know, when it launched and because of the cost, I saw so much negativity. You know, we went out to one of the very early launches. We were made aware of it, and even we were kind of scratching our heads a little bit until you've ridden the system. And then it's like, oh, it's just near perfect. Like, you know, we're hearing, you know, I've had AXS, the normal stuff on the last couple of bikes. Transmission now, you put it on, you just don't even have to think about it. You can be, you know, a bit of a moron with your shifting, and you can still get away with it. You know, even someone of my ample heft, and you know, I've been running it since it first launched. It's been cracking.
I see you also sell high bikes. Have you got a like in stock?
Yep. We've got a like in stock, we've got a like in demo. We like to get people out to try the different systems. The Ride 60 systems are another pretty good system. Yeah.
And how do you find it compares to, say, the Specialized offering?
It's very different to ride the two bikes. The Specialized feels very organic. Certainly the new 50 Newton meter engine feels plenty pokey, whereas the Fatsuer, again, you know, it has got a higher peak torque, but it does feel a bit less organic. You know, it doesn't seem as intuitive.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I actually had a quick go on Chris Smith's and I had that exact same feedback.
I'd compare the differences between the two very similarly to the difference between the full-fat Specialized motor and the Bosch motor. Yeah. I find the Bosch motor is very snatchy, less organic feeling, but again, you know, both great motors.
Yeah, coming in. If you had to pick just one e-bike from the shop that's currently in stock today, which bike would you pick? Money, no object.
Money, no object. What about riding group, no object?
That's a good point.
If I was to ride on my own, I'd be hard torn between Levo SL, probably an S-Works Limited or an S-Works, and a Kenevo SL for riding on my own. Again, another S-Works example. But yeah, I think to live within my current situ, pretty much what I've got now, really, the S-Works Levo Gen 3, as a full-fat bike. It's just an amazing bike. It's, you know, it's light, it's nimble, it's poppy. You can really build it to how you want it to ride as well.
And then let's break the bike down a little bit. So drivetrain, what's the brand that you would prefer to ride?
It's all about that SRAM transmission.
It isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I never thought I'd say it, but it definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've definitely stolen a march, I think, on everybody else.
Yeah, it's just seamless integration, setup. You know, I raced out in Mirabel this year, and I clouted it hard, like enough to almost stop me dead. And she was brand new. You know, got to the bottom of that stage, and there was 20 people with the bikes upside down with no derailleurs on.
Is that right?
And be it luck, be it whatever, I don't know. But I know I hit it hard. You know, it's got the marks to prove it, and it never missed a beat. I heard it shift over, shift itself back. You know, that's pretty epic when you can hear a rock go through, you know, hit your derailleur and push it out the way, and then it shifts back.
That's amazing.
Proper clever.
Yeah. And have you ridden much of the auto shift or free shift systems?
Very little, in honesty. Yeah, the brands that we sell currently, it's not equipped with. I had a very brief ride on a competitor's bike that was on the new SRAM system with the, obviously, auto shift, and I just found it, even have played with settings, you know, central and then all the way one way, all the cadence all the way the other way, I just couldn't get it to feel organic.
Is that right?
I just struggled with it. I think the auto shift feature, once you stop pedaling and you're coasting, I think that would benefit a lot of people, maybe. But in honesty, I think the actual automatic shifting, I would have to switch it off and go and stay manual. Certainly with something like transmission, where it's just so fluid.
Do you know, the one thing that I noticed when I started riding the SLs was just how slow and how bad I am at shifting since riding a full fat e-bike for so long. And I noticed just how much more important it is that you get your shifts right when you transition from the down to the up. So maybe that's one area that those auto shift systems could perhaps come in handy.
For sure. I think, you know, with the SL and the limited amount of torque that's available, shifting and the correct cadence and the way it delivers power is definitely important.
Yeah.
As it is with a full power engine as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then let's move on to brakes. So I have a confession to make. I am terrible at bleeding SRAM brakes. So what either is wrong with me or what is wrong with the brake system?
I'd say there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. The big one is, if you're using the bleeding edge tool, bleed the brakes, follow the procedure. What we've found as a stall really useful as well, if you'd like a much shorter amount of free play before you hit the braking surface, once you've bled them, got them nice and happy, literally close the calipers down. So close the pads in on the calipers if they're in brand new pads, open them back up. For whatever reason, I can't explain why or how, it just seems to reduce that level of travel before you connect.
Okay.
It's the one complaint that we get, certainly on the lower end SRAM brakes, that they've just got too much free play.
Yeah.
But that seems to do them also. And again, it's going to sound odd as a little hack. Just chuck a zip tie around them on a night. You'll come to them the next morning and they'll feel brand new.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. Do you find that you get issues with the other brake systems? Because I actually found that with Shimano, if I start feeling like there's a bit of like added brake fade or there's too much movement in the lever, then I just put the pot on top, just give it a quick flick with some fluid in there, and then it all of a sudden feels like new again. Yeah,
giving it a bump. There's a few brands that utilise the same fill pot from the top. Obviously, Shimano do, TRP do, Hope do a bleed. There's bleed from top as well. Again, there is really any Shimano seems to make a significant difference on. I could been quite a big guy. I could write the book on brakes and power and bits like that. We see, interestingly, different people of different sizes and rotor sizes, brake pads. There's such a big game to it, and finding out what works for you is super important.
Come on, Rich. I'm going to ask you one brake system. If you were to choose one, what would it be?
That's a good one. From personal experience, really liking the Hope Tech 4s.
Yeah, I thought you'd say that.
Mostly, certainly for riding in the Alps and bits like that, as a really big guy myself, I'm finding the vented rotors work amazing, and they have, even on some super long race stages, all but eliminated brake fade for me, which is something I've never had before. Even on 220s and Magura rotors, on the guides, I was always struggling. This year, pop those on, and yeah, bad boy.
What colour?
I've got a mix and match. I've put some second-hand E4s on mine that have come off another bike. So they actually started life as E4s, and then I swapped the back to a V4 caliper just before I went out to the Alps.
Do you notice much of a difference between them?
Yeah, I actually prefer the lever feel of the E4.
Is that right?
Yeah. Obviously the pistons at the slave cylinder end are smaller, so you tend to get a more direct lever feel. I like it for a front more. Okay. But yeah, the V4, I would struggle to go backwards now, just because I know no matter where I go, how long the descent is, I'm probably not going to struggle too much with brake fade.
Yeah. Have you tried trick stuff brakes?
No.
Me neither.
No, I'm just a poor bike mechanic.
Yeah. I'm really intrigued. It's like, where does that added super duper cost come from?
I've certainly heard a lot about them and know a few people, and obviously seen the claim results and things, and yeah, it's an interesting brake system as someone who, like I say, has struggled yearly with brakes and going out to the Alps. I'm always keen to try anything, but when you start talking about £1,000 for a set of brakes, it's it's getting
toppy.
There ain't many with that luxury, is there?
And now we'll move on to suspension systems. So what suspension systems do you prefer to work on? We'll start off with that.
I'll be honest, as far as a suspension workshop, we don't do anything in-house here. We will farm it out to either SRAMTech for RockShox, or obviously
Mojo.
Fox. Well, we can't say Mojo.
Can you not?
Mojo was obviously when it was Tim. Mojo is obviously EXT now. So,
sure, of course.
Yeah, but yeah, we use the Fox Service Centre.
Showing my age there.
Yeah. And we do quite a bit. We're starting to do a bit more with Öhlins now, which obviously Windwave, a new distributor for Öhlins, so we're starting to get a bit more involved with that. They also distribute DVO that we do, and I personally really like as well. It's a fork that again, certainly for bigger or heavier riders on heavier bikes, work really well just because the way the positive and negative air systems work in the fork. There is no negative air in a DVO fork, and they use a spring preload that someone with more ample heft like myself, you can just wind more preload on and it feels plush off the top and still won't bottom out. Öhlins, they do separate positive and negative air. If you've done any of their forks, you'll know. Again, you can start to create that feeling via that. I've just found, like I say, been on the extreme ends of things. I've tried most systems and been a heavier guy. DVO stuff's worked really well for me.
So in terms of upper end of the market and then the lower end, are there a particular fork that you would recommend to somebody if they weren't looking to spend that much money on a fork?
I think, to be honest, like a lot of the factory fitted Fox 36 and Rhythms, are a cracking fork for the money, you know. Or, RockShox Lyric or Yari, you can't go wrong at that entry level. There's not really a bad fork out there. I think some time and knowledge tuning them and getting them set up right for your weight is going to help massively as well.
Yeah. Would you argue that suspension setup can sometimes be more of a hindrance than a help? Because some people, perhaps you get bikes back in for a service and you think, bloody hell, how have you set this thing up?
I think there's a lot of differences between where people ride, how they ride, and I think some of it comes down to that is their preference and they've spent time testing that to get how they want. It might not suit me, it might not suit you, but it suits them. And then there's other people that literally it could be just a bit of blind ignorance, and we've seen people with you going over to Shockways and stuff like that to try and set up, which I think is a good little tool to get people in the ballpark.
Yeah. And then upgrades. If people are looking to upgrade their bikes, where do you think is the first place they should start looking, or maybe the best place they should look to improve their e-bike?
Contact points are always a big one. Yeah. Tyres on the floor, grips to your arms, if they're, grips to your hands if they're not obviously comfortable, the right size, it is as simple as that. You start to develop arm pump and bits from stuff like that. And pedals, pick a good set of grippy pedals, flats or clips, depending on what you like.
I think we've pretty much broken down an entire e-bike there almost, haven't we?
Upgrade everything.
Yeah.
By now.
I tell you another thing that I really like, and that's a good bottle holder on a frame. And the thing that has been annoying me a little bit is with the Levo, with the SL, you've got the expansion battery on it, and of course that sits where I want to put my bottle. Now that's something that is like, I can't find many negatives with those bikes, but that's one of the few things that's really bothering me.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Kind of sympathise the same with you. Yeah, certainly for bigger days out when you want to crack some elevation in, it's got to be a fanny pack, isn't it?
It has, yeah.
Yeah, you can even sneak an extra extender in there as well. Yeah, a double bottle. That's a lot of riding, though,
isn't it? That's a lot of riding.
That's more than one bottle of water's worth of riding.
Well, I think we've got a lot of upsell going on here. We've got we've got at least a bottle and a fanny pack, and and then an additional range extender. I think we're doing well out of whoever comes into RaceCo Cycles next.
Got to have those big Scottish days prepared for it,
Well, yeah, of course. I must admit, we did, how far did we go? 16, 17 miles around the Gwydir Forest, around the Marin Trail in North Wales on the Levo SL and the Kenevo SL, and we managed to rinse the batteries over that duration. A lot of up and down, a lot of climbing. But, I mean, when it comes to range on a bike, I do still think a full-fat bike with a decent sized battery is the way to go. Do you think that's maybe one of the few areas that the SLs let people down?
Again, I think it does honestly come to speed of climbing as well. If you were riding purely with SL riders, then no, I think a lot of people are actually, fit guys, myself not included.
Wow. Heard about your racing.
Oh yeah, don't believe the hype. No, I think people are still able to put a big push in and actually potentially do more mileage with an extender with only 530 than some people are able to do on a full fat. But again, I do think it's broken down person to person. Yeah. The level of fitness, for yourself. When you start cruising as in, like a liaison on a SL bike, it's certainly a lot less effort to get the thing moving and keep up the speed, and, it reacts a lot quicker to your pedal strokes than pedaling a full fat near that limit on a liaison as well. So it's kind of interesting.
You mentioned about the fun of riding an e-bike earlier, and like fun is not cheating. And the one thing that I really have almost taken, I now take for granted, is just how enjoyable climbing is on a full-powered e-bike, and particularly those techie climbs. You can make like a special stage of your own in your own little woods just out of climbing tracks that previously you would never have even thought of before. I'm even starting to try and climb them on the SLs, and they're finding that a lot more difficult. I think people underestimate just how much enjoyment you can get from climbing on an e-bike.
For sure, climbing for most people and most avid mountain bikers has almost been a means to an end, or the way to a destination. Nowadays, there is elements of fun to it, for sure. You can challenge yourself, push yourself harder forwards with, steeper, more technical climbs, build your technique really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quantity is the other thing. I ride a lot more now. I do a lot more descending now, and I find that it's actually, I'm becoming a better rider because of an e-bike.
Yeah, it's one of the conversations we often have at point of sale as well. Like, I only really ride my bike once a week, or, and I'm like, honestly, if you're getting into an e-bike, you're probably going to find that you're going to use that more than you think.
Yeah.
And the success stories have been there as well. The people, like, you'll speak to them a week later, it's like, I've done 200 miles on it.
Is that right?
Like, it's nice to see. Super nice to see.
Well, I think that's a pretty good way to wrap things up. Thank you very much, Rich, for inviting me and the EMTB Podcast to RaceCo Cycles. And I guess I wish you all the best for the rest of the year. I mean, judging by the amount of boxes you've got sat over there, I think you've got a lot of bikes that you're going to be selling quite soon.
I've got plenty of work to do, as always. We all have here. No, thanks for coming and joining us. Appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure to be on my first podcast.
Amazing. Brilliant. I think you smashed it.
Cheers. Thank you.